I'm Jason Sylvia, and this is the Creative Capital Show. A show about creative people and how those creative people turn into entrepreneurs by taking their creativity and turning it into a business and facing all the trials and tribulations along the way. When it comes to content creation, especially content creation for social media, to say that video is having a moment right now would be an understatement. With the rise of Instagram stories, YouTube shorts, and the platform that really put short-form video under the spotlight, TikTok, video, especially good video content, is more important than ever. But what goes into making objectively good video content? Is style more important than technical ability? Have the rules of video content creation changed in a post-TikTok world? To answer these questions, and talk about a whole lot more, is this episode's guests, Henry Kerstgens and Austin Delin of HAUS PVD. HAUS describes themselves as a creative studio specializing in video production, photography, social media, and digital marketing. This, combined with a passion for visual storytelling, means HAUS doesn't just make content, they create cinematic experiences. In this episode, I sit down with Henry and Austin and talk about their inspiration for picking up a camera, creative ways to use credit to finance gear, leveraging relationships to gain your first clients, video content creation in the corporate world versus being a freelancer, how to balance your artistic drive while acknowledging a client's wants and needs, which metrics, if any, determine a successful video, why sometimes people mistake creative agencies for marketing agencies, and vice versa, and a whole lot more. Oh, and one final thing. There was so much value in this conversation that I wanted nothing on the cutting room floor. So this episode is a two-parter. Enjoy. Hey everybody, Jason here, host of the Creative Capital Show. Just wanted to remind you that the story of HAUS PVD is a two-part episode, and you are listening to part two. Part one goes through more of Henry and Austin's inspirations, how they learned to edit video, shoot video, what got them into this industry in the first place, their first jobs within the industry. So pretty much everything right before HAUS was created as a business. So if you want to hear more of that origin story, please listen to part one. I highly suggest it. It definitely gives this part two, a bit more context, as in this part of the episode, we're going to dive more into the business of HAUS PVD, some more of the higher profile clients and how to deal with them, Henry and Austin's thoughts on the industry, how creative content works with marketing, the trends they're seeing when it comes to video content creation, all that kind of stuff. That is here in part two. If you want to hear more about the inspiration, the origin story, please listen to part one. All right. And with that, enjoy. So were you both in the mindset of, because I, Henry, you were saying like furloughed, pandemic, things of that nature. And you were like, no, we're going to get, like, we're doing this, we're getting the paperwork, etc. Austin, was that the same for you? Like, hey, we're just going to dive into this and like, do this, or did you have a different idea of it, a different opinion? Did you come to that conclusion differently?
Well, I was working on a project, and Henry kind of just like busted the door open to my apartment. He's like, "It happened," and he was like, "Let's do this."
I don't know why this just sounds like something out of
it's like
romantic
legit.
comedy. Like, no, dude, we need to do
It's
this.
honestly really crazy. Like
we left
that.
a huge part out. We also used to live in the same apartment building.
Oh yeah,
so,
okay.
and that was like a huge proponent to like what we were doing.
True.
So I did just like kick in his door and was
I
like,
was gonna say you just leave the door open and just people just kick in.
But I did,
yeah.
and that was like a normal
Kramer,
thing.
like
Legit.
we're gonna start a video company.
literally.
Well,
we already were an LC though. We already prepared. Yes, we were. We already because we became official April 1st April 14th or something.
That'd be funnier if it was April 1st.
I don't remember what it was. It's early April, but
wow.
and I got laid off like end of July. So like, I think we were, working up to this moment.
Wow.
So,
but yeah, he comes in, right? And in my mind, I'm like, kind of like, well, I've been waiting for something like this. Not like deviously hoping that he gets let go from his job, but just kind of waiting until he was like comfortable to make this his life too, because, it's hard. And he had good traction going with the companies that he was able to work his way up in. And for me, I had just always been freelancing. Of course, he did get me that job at Colette. That was awesome for some consistent income for a year or so. And then I left to go back to freelance because I was just like, I miss my freedom. Yes, it's going to be harder, but I do have some good opportunities lined up at the moment. Pandemic hits. I kind of like, not a lot of that continued, but we both were like, all right, well, let's do this. And I was, as much as I felt bad, I was kind of stoked that we were finally in this, like, in the ocean together. And I was like, yo, like, this is where the real hunger is going to come from. This is where that you're going to feel the burn, but it's going to produce some results here. And, it did. So
as a duo, do you think that both of you were needed to influence each other in order to start this? Like, do you think either one of you would have started HAUS or something similar had you have just been friends that keep working? Like, do you think either one of you would have started your own company, your own thing? Or like, did it have to be the both
That's
of
so
you?
hard because I'll never really know. But I feel like we discovered that like the products that we produced together were just so much better than when we were doing things on our own. And we just were like, this is like, there's no HAUS without each other. I just think we realized that like together, our brains together just made something like far superior than when we weren't, So I don't know. Like, in hindsight, I have absolutely no idea. I truthfully can't see anything without like Austin being like, a part of it. So I don't know.
It definitely wouldn't be the same. I mean, I think, yeah, definitely wouldn't be the same because there's, not only are our styles kind of different, but so complementary, and we've kind of worked out this synergy, or it just naturally has occurred by us working together, shooting together, editing together, doing all that process together. I don't think it would be the same, and I don't think I would pay attention to certain things the same way I do had Henry not, over some time been like, hey, dude, I was watching this YouTube video and like, we should really start doing this because this is going to make your life easier and it's going to make our job easier and, way beyond like what's going to be easy, but like what's going to look awesome and like what's going to be cool. And he's, for a while, a lot of the freelance stuff I did wasn't, I had some gigs where I had an opportunity to make something really cool visually, but he kind of like pushed me to like look for more work in that neck of the woods and not just, be cool with making a paycheck from like doing some customer testimonials for a data company. That was really comfortable and that was cool. But the work that we're able to get now is kind of a product of like us wanting more and to like sink our teeth into more creative,
chasing a dream, man.
Kind of earning those opportunities to do cool shit.
So
sorry for my sniffling, by the way.
It just means the podcast is real and not overly produced.
Yeah.
See, I use all these sounds and everything to my advantage. I'm just like, now you know it's real. Now you know it's a real thing that
Sniffling
I go to different
sound
locations.
pack.
It's the sounds of the studio.
Yes.
I can't preface that enough. Yeah.
So you got you got the business name, you got the paperwork done. You got the joint bank account. You're from on paper standpoint a legitimate business. What was some of the first things besides that you figured like, oh, we need to get as far as like, because I'm assuming you had your own individual equipment like cameras, lighting, things because you were working, but like maybe you needed to scale. How did you like figure out or go about, or what were like the necessities that you needed? Like, was it studio space first and second? Did that come later? And how did you get the capital? Like, how did you actually fund this? Because I feel like people don't talk about that enough. And so, what were the first things you figured out? Like, oh, we need to get X, Y, and Z like done before we go to our first client. And then also, here's how we get the money to buy things X, Y, and Z.
Well, I'm just going to put this out here. This is a really, I don't know, I love where this is going right now because I think, like, again, with the collective thing, me and Austin did have our own stuff that we just would like joined together and used together. It wasn't like we co-owned it like the way we do now. Like all our gear, like we paid for it through the business. Like it's all like,
owned by the business.
Yeah, it's owned by the business. But I think, I don't know. I mean, at least for me, like when I started freelancing, I started financing my own gear. I had like a line of credit through like Hunts, like up the road. And that's where it all kind of started for me, where I started to understand like just like how financing works and how like, if you don't have the money right now, you like at least at Hunts, they have this great, like, interest-free 12 months, financing program that you can do. And I would take advantage of that all the time. That's how I got like my first like real video camera.
So it's almost like, I want to say correct. It almost sounds more like a loan rather than a credit card. Like, or a loan the way if you can finesse it, it's almost like a loan with no interest.
Well, the finesse aspect is the no interest. And I think that's where the allure is, right? Especially if you don't go crazy and you know that, okay, even if I just pay the minimum,
And
payment,
just for those who don't know, Hunts is a specialized photo and video equipment store.
Yep.
Correct.
And they do have they're based in Melrose, but they have an office a location in Providence. Those guys are great. Shout out to Nick. He's always helped us out. But to that point, I think that's where we started. We had no capital, dude. Like when we started the business, we actually each made capital investments from our own bank accounts to put money in, which was scary because it was the pandemic and like, there was just a lot going on, a lot not going on.
So
which was
self-funded to buy the equipment.
Well, not yet. Because we didn't use that money. We did not use that money to buy the gear. Truthfully, we bought the first video camera we bought under the business. We financed through Hunts.
Oh, okay.
Or actually, no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Through
the
Hunts.
S3.
Yeah. The Sony A7S3 we bought collectively. Yeah. Actually, we may have actually bought half of it. No, sorry. I'm backtracking. It doesn't really matter because we did finance it. It was through B&H.
We put the capital investment in to have a safety net for the
rent.
For the 3 or 4 months of rent. We wanted to pay out or basically have it available.
When you say rent, do you mean renting equipment or renting studio?
Renting a studio.
Okay, so the money that you funded, so you're getting equipment through the financing of B&H Photo and Video.
We already own some stuff ourselves, right? And when we pool it together, it's basically like just enough for like the bare bones.
Right.
But I think it's a good point that you pointed that out because I think sometimes people don't think of like individual stores that sell the things they need. That like they may have a credit card and like if they do a promotion, maybe you should, like, I'm not saying it's figuring out how to use credit to your advantage rather than thinking credit's the scary thing.
And you need to have like an understanding of that. Like a lot of people think, oh my God, I don't know how you guys do that. I can't afford to get a camera. And I literally vouch for this method all the time because it's it worked for me when I was a sole proprietor. I think right now it's working for our business. And now granted, we don't finance anything anymore. We have the capital where we can, if we need to go buy something for ourselves, we do it now. But that's how we started. Yeah. Because it was at a time of like, we didn't know what was going on.
No, I think it's something good to really point out.
Right.
So how did you go about figuring out the studio space that is best for you and like figuring out like, we need this space versus this other one we looked at? Because you were saying that you put funds from your own personal funds to get the studio spot.
Well, we found that, it's all weird because I think we signed the lease like literally like a week before there was like a global shutdown, right? Like travel ban, all that stuff. So we didn't know, like we knew that something bad was happening, but we were like,
not to the extent of what it was going to be.
So we signed the lease to this amazing space that was just like, I don't know. It was just like, me and Austin always laugh about it because the property manager or whoever that showed us this space was like, it's an odd space. You're not going to really like it.
Yeah, I don't know if this is what you need.
And we walked in and it was like, lights went off, dude. Like, because there's a whole separate side that we now rent. And we knew right when we walked in there that, whoa, this is going to be our office, the one side. And then the other side is going to be a production studio where we can do our own stuff. There's no windows. So it's a completely controlled environment, which a lot of people really like in this space. And we just kind of,
So when you saw it, it checked off the boxes.
Everything.
Pretty much.
And then you could almost see the business like as you're looking.
Yeah.
Right.
Gotcha. It felt like just like a happy accident. And somehow the rent was like pretty manageable for what we had going on. It seemed almost too good to be true. So we were like the squeakiest wheels about getting in there.
Huge,
we forced it. We were like, we need to be in here.
Now, is this the current studio space that I'm sitting in, or is this a different space?
This is the second space now. This is our new like office, and we also do rent this space out as well. But it's mainly our headquarters now.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you self-funded 3 to 4 months of rent in this studio space. You have the LLC paperwork. You had your individual freelancing clients. Then you are also financing equipment through the B&H. So there you go. If you want to take away, folks, if you're in the photo or video sphere, just look up B&H photo and video and do the finesse. Is it B&H or Hunts?
So both.
Okay. Sorry if I'm mixing up.
No, you're not. Well, I got confused because
we had lines of credit with both, right?
Yeah, that's how it was. But for the business, it was B&H because I got a even bigger line of credit through B&H. I think I got like $15K line of credit, and then Hunts was like something lower. But I don't know.
Either way, you were able
just
to use that to your advantage.
And it it can be scary at first, but if I'm not trying to like preach, but like if you believe in yourself and you know that like there are jobs that you're going to be able to pull in that are going to be able to pay this thing back, then financing gear is a really smart decision.
Because you may not have the money right now, but if you end up getting a couple of jobs out of it, like and you do, I don't know, X amount of jobs in the year, and then you only need 4 or 5 to like pay for that camera, then it's just like
and
the other ones free. Then you already have it paid off. You don't have the interest, and then the other ones are straight up cash that goes into your bank.
Exactly. And you just got to be smart with that too. Like just know that like every time you get the check or, you get paid out, just make sure you're taking some of those funds and allocating them to paying this back. Because, you don't own it until you pay off the balance. So
yeah. And you only get about like, what is it?
12 months.
But everything that comes in the door, you only get about like what, 75% of that or less.
Right. And then you got to account for taxes as well.
Yeah. So you can't
25, 30%.
You can't
this is
assume you're
leading into
taking
another
home,
question I'm
like,
going to have a little bit further down that I definitely want to ask you both.
Scariest stuff ever. If you're going to talk about taxes, I might have to run out of here.
Well, not that, but it does lead to another question. So what I wanted to ask was, so you got these things set up, and then you said you were signing the lease, and you didn't realize this global pandemic was going to be the extent that what it was. Yep. And you had some of your clients from freelancing, maybe it couldn't do anything because nobody could do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that being said, as HAUS, how did you go about getting your first client? Was it more in your internal networks of like people you had worked with, or were you like doing the cold calling thing?
I think it was.
We've never cold called, which we've been discussing that we should.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we're just getting to a place where maybe less of a cold call, but
an email,
more pitch. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, a cold message.
Yes,
a cold DM.
Just a pitch.
Exactly. More pitching ourselves and being like, "Hey, this is what we've been doing the past 3 years.
But
check it out." But
your first client as HAUS, you didn't have to do that.
Well, we were already HAUS. That's the thing. We but it was.
Yep.
I don't want to say it was sketchy, but like say Austin was the account manager for one job, he would invoice under Austin Delin, and then he would pay me out, and then we would file taxes separately. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
We were sole proprietors working under a collective, but that was before we became an LC. So those clients were already there. We already had the rapport. You know what I'm saying?
We had established like a pretty good rapport in both of our own networks, but then also collectively as the business, we had we had been working together for years doing freelance projects. So we have all those people. We have the word of mouth from that.
So even with everything going on, you still had it like because of your own individual work and because of the working under the brand of HAUS, even though it wasn't a business on paper yet, you could feed off those networks enough that it was bringing some money in to keep the thing afloat.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I would say that also that this time where there's not a lot of marketing dollars floating around, there's not a lot of companies actively looking for marketing, and then as time went on, if they were looking for it, it was very like COVID focused. It was very like about the pandemic, which turned out to be good for some creators. But again, like a lot of our clientele, we just kind of, at the time, one of the best things we could do was just kind of localize and like really dip into the art and music scene that exists in Providence and in Rhode Island in general.
So that's where that's a good point, Austin, because I think that's where things really
drummed up a lot
of
of traction.
Because HAUS, or at least like the work we were doing together before the pandemic, wasn't necessarily really like local. It wasn't we weren't really in Rhode Island, not even really so much in like Massachusetts or parts of New England. We were actually traveling a lot. Like we'd get on a plane and fly somewhere for like a healthcare client or something, not in New England.
We had a retainer with a data company. But you still knew
those clients though without having to message them?
We did, but here's the thing, like there's travel bans and things like that. You couldn't even like get on a plane, all this stuff like the vaccine or whatever didn't exist and all these other like, things that got rolled out as time went on.
I'm just finding it more interesting that you had like the first clients were non-local and you knew them like
well, they were from a lot of different things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just plugging my dad real quick. He was always pretty good about, pitching and being like, hey, you know, my son's doing video. And so a lot of those companies he might have done a site for, this is way back.
Gotcha.
I might have met somebody through him, right? And then over time they're like, you know, this guy's a reliable video guy. Like I'm not gonna knock that, right? So those people would come back to us, and you know, just we were flexible and we were a value play, and I think we still are. But
I think getting the studio and like putting the foot down, you know, it's just kind of like putting the flag down, saying like, hey, we're here in Rhode Island. Having that studio, we also started renting it out. It was a great networking tool. We would start meeting a lot of, you know, other creatives in the scene, and then just doing projects locally, even if they were like super low budget. Like social media was a huge like component to like our exposure and really starting to build the brand. Because at first, I don't know, we had a social media account, but there was no traction, dude. Like no one like really like engaged with us. It was just kind of like this like platform with like some stuff on it. But we started to really plant, you know, the seed here in Rhode Island, and working with a lot of people in Rhode Island, brands, you know, like, that, and then the reel, when we put out the reel, which was basically like, you know, because at that point it was like we had been HAUS as a collective for 3 years, but the reel was kind of like the truth. It was like this, I don't remember what the caption was. It was like,
all things creative.
No, it was like new studio.
Oh yeah. I know what you're saying.
New site, because we built a website. New site, new studio, same vision. Yep. You know, basically saying like we're here now, like legitimately. That was kind of like our announcement, and then from there it just kind of like, you know, I don't know. I think that's how it went down.
I think within the music and art scene and you know, culinary and just all the different facets of like this Rhode Island scene, you know. Word spreads pretty quick, you know, and I think that we still, we took a professional eye and a professional approach to as many of those opportunities, small or big, you know, whether it was like a hip hop artist or like an event recap or like, you know, a commercial for a food pop up or just a lot of those things. We just built so many relationships with so many different creators that it just really helped elevate us. And it also just helps us like get out there more, get the experience as far as like taking on production from start to finish, you know, from the top to the finish.
And we take like even like some of the lowest paying jobs ever. We just wanted to do everything we could to just kind of like make a name for ourselves out here.
Yeah, we needed money too.
We needed money, man. Like, so like, yeah, we would do things for anything.
We didn't have like loans. We were, I think, you know, that just wasn't really a thing for us.
So really leveraging your relationships was extremely important to us,
especially in the social space. And like social media, we started to really understand how it was a helpful tool in connecting us with other local creatives. Like I can't explain how many of these, like, you know, I'm just going to call them low budget jobs. Because at the end of the day, like, you know, these social media platforms are highly curated. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you don't really know what went down behind the scenes for whatever video it is you're showing, right? Like they don't know. I always say this to my friends or people in our network that like, you don't know how much someone paid for said video. If you try to do it at the highest level you can, you know what I mean? Make it look like, even for spec work, which are, you know, videos that people just do for like, you know, brands they want to work with, right? Like you make like a video in a gym and it's like a spec ad for Nike, so to speak, right? How much just sharing some of that content on social media, like Instagram, we met new people, and now we have the space. So we had a physical location where people could come in, sit down, meet with us. We'd chop it up, and it would just lead to new things, new opportunities. And that's really where things started to like go up. And I
was going to say, especially like producers, agencies,
creative
companies
directors,
that look to, you know, hire talent with experience,
like almost like A&R. You know what I mean? Like some people found us, dude. Like I'm just not even going to use names, but people that came in and just gave us opportunities that like,
based on something they saw us post on social media,
and they saw the potential and how it could translate to something that they were producing or something that they were involved in.
And you've built up an impressive client list. I mean, Avenue Concept, TEDx, Boston University, Kaiser Permanente, Oracle. Feel free to stop me.
No. I mean, well, I'll be honest. A lot of those aren't even really our clients anymore. That was like pre-pandemic.
Faded.
Oh yeah, that was recently.
Oh yeah,
RISD, Johnson and Wales.
Long Live Beer Works.
Yep. Nova Farms.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Culture Shock Festival, Solita.
Yep, Solita. And that's all local stuff, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what I think is pretty cool about what's kind of happening right now. Because, and again, like we call ourselves a video production company, but what I think is kind of unique about us is like, you know, we're not like this huge, we're two guys sure, we outsource from time to time and bring in other people to make the production bigger. The crews can be bigger. But most cases, dude, like it's just me and Austin with the cameras and the vision. That's really all it is. So it's like we really are this boutique operation that kind of comes in. Some people have told us we have a videographer's approach, if you will, where sometimes we might not have the pre-pro or the foresight to make this huge spectacle, but we can go into a room, look at it for 5 or 10 minutes and figure out what we're going to have to do to yield like the highest level, video.
So I have a question. When you first started HAUS, whether it was the brand or just on paper, either way, was the idea from the get-go, because this is from your own site, you do visual storytelling, branded content, post-production work, along with creative strategy. Was that the vision from the get-go to do these multiple different things, or did it start off, hey, like we know how to do video and that's what we know, and it branched off into that?
I would say that's, doing what we have done. I would say that's just kind of all part of the process. People might hire us for one specific thing, but like that's all part of like every project, I would say. There's always, if you can, there's always some level of like strategy involved, unless you want to be flying blind the whole time. And like, your experience does come from those times where you just say yes and then figure it out on the way. But it's all part of it, Right. What are the things you listed again?
I think just we're a 2-man team.
Branded
so I think,
content.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I'm sorry that I love that you're going off that website, but it's so outdated. One of the things we're going to do this year is get a professional. I made that website, dude, and I hate it. That's just something I had to do to get something on Google. You know what I mean?
It works though.
Yeah, it gets the job done. It
explains what
but
we
we're
do.
a 2-man operation, and a lot of people, so we're thrown into a lot of scenarios where we wear so many hats. And I just think sometimes and in some situations, we discover new things about ourselves that we might not have known, or something where it's like, oh man, we're actually, we did that for this project. And that's...
Oh, I didn't realize that has like a name and that's a service that can be offered.
What do you mean?
That's a good point. He's saying like script writing, for instance.
You're naturally doing something and it was just part of your process, but you didn't know that people can and will charge separately for that. And it's like, oh crap, we can do that too. Like that light bulb.
Like even the studio thing, like that. Now we're like studio managing, and we have 2 studios, and like
you rent out the studio, right?
And
another revenue stream,
right? And exactly, and at least for the other space, the reason why we kept it when we moved and made this our new like office was because it has the ability. Some months, I mean, we got to do a little more. We're spread a little thin right now, but it has the ability to pay for itself. So it's like, why would we not keep that and offer that as something that we provide as a service?
The reason why I want to ask that is because do you think, in both your opinions, do you think the days of like a special, because it seems like if you were working in a creative field, and again, I'm like kind of talking on the outside looking in here, it seems like before or back in the day, you could be specialized in a certain thing and do that thing and get paid. Maybe you have to go to like a city or more of a creative center, but you could specialize. Now it seems like, and feel free to agree or disagree and state why, it seems like the idea of being multidisciplined went from like, oh, that's the exception. Now it seems like it has to be the norm.
I think so. I think it's now that's more
and
valuable.
Why do you think that is?
Because people don't want to pay as much money, and you have to wear all the hats, even if you don't want to. That's what I think. That's my opinion on it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of different ways to look at it. I think it works for some people because that's all they want to do, or that's what they feel they're valuable doing, just that one thing. Again, I don't know if we're talking about different kinds of video work, or we're talking about like just being the audio guy or just being the video guy. But again, like it's kind of one and the same, I think it helps to be multifaceted. I think it helps to be flexible. It helps to be creative. It helps to be solution oriented and to find creative solutions and to build your skill set to be that person who makes a difference in the project because you brought your expertise to the table, or you just brought an attitude where you're like, hey, I'm creative. I'm a risk taker. I'm going to put myself out there and try to make this one thing happen because it's lacking and it needs to be done in this project, or I think it's a good addition, So, and you just kind of work away at your ability to have the confidence to make those things happen, right? And if you don't, maybe you hire somebody or
you outsource.
Exactly.
I think in our situation too, like being able to wear like different, hats and like
learning from each other, learning new things,
and having different like, I don't know, being able to, jump into different roles. Like it's a unique value proposition. You know what I mean? At least as for our business model, like we provide a lot more as this like small unit. And I just think that's valuable to some of our clients. They're just like, wow, you know, you guys produce work at a pretty high level. And it's crazy because like in most scenarios, it's like just you guys, even from like concept to like completion, you know? So, and I'm not saying that this is something I ever wanted. I just think that that's just where content's headed. I think you can't just be a DP anymore. I mean, some people can, you know what I mean? But like being a DP and an editor or a DP and like a colorist, like that's super valuable. And you're able to knock out two worlds that kind of exist simultaneously. You know what I mean? As one person, that's like huge. You know what I mean? And it's someone you want to hire too. Like we would love to hire someone that can wear multiple hats. You don't have to be a video creator necessarily, but like, you know, I see that a lot more with like video production companies where they're hiring these people that can do so many things. That's so valuable because not every day is the same. You know what I mean? When I'm not always editing videos every day, I might just be making calls, you know, and being in meetings all day or just like consulting, you know what I mean? So
managing media or like
Yeah.
doing something completely uncreative, but
Right.
it needs to happen for the project. So
I think this is the perfect segue into
Yeah.
my next question is, can you walk through maybe just a streamlined version of client comes to you, the project, what goes into decision making of, do we want to take this project on? And then how do you work with that client from start to finish? How do you structure things? How do you set deadlines and goals and things of that nature? And then, well, let's go with that first, and then I'll ask the second part of it. So just how do you like if you can walk through the process of how you work with a client and like how you just set
Yeah.
up like timelines and deadlines and like how you work with them, like how do you figure out who the point person's going to be on their end, et cetera.
I think, you know, again, it's kind of like a case by case basis. Like some projects come in the weirdest ways, like I don't even know how to describe, or, you know,
Yep.
Someone might have like reached out to us, set up a call or a Zoom or whatever, right? Or they want to come in the studio and meet us face to face just to say like hello. And it might not have even been like an opportunity until like the meeting happened. And they were like, well, I'm glad I met you guys. I do have this opportunity. You know, then it goes to, we start to kick things off. But I think everything does just kind of start with like a casual discussion. You know what I mean? Like we just, at the end of the day, like it's just, like I said, like early on, it's just like personality based. Like, do we vibe with each other? Client,
Yep.
you know, vendor, like are we a good fit for each other? Because back in the day we used to say yes to everything, and then sometimes we'd be kind of like beating ourselves up because we're like, you know, that really wasn't something we should have done. You know, that wasn't really like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to do this type of work. I don't want to work with this person again, whatever, right?
now you know what some of those red flags are.
Right. Now we know, we're so like aware of it now. We're very perceptive, where it wasn't like that at first, but it's all like a meeting and just kind of like, because some people don't even like, some of our clients or the work that comes in, they don't really know what they want.
That was going to be my next question.
Right.
Yeah.
So, or they'll
So-
see something that we did that is like completely not like their,
Not in their lane, but they want it to look like that, thinking that you can
Yeah.
apply that like to everything.
Either it's
Yeah.
our like a video we had done for a different client or someone else like on the internet, you know what I mean? Or this ad I saw, like, can you do it for this budget? You know what I mean? It's just kind of working with those variables. Like it's a lot of it has to do with what do you want? What's the message? What's the need? And, you know, unfortunately, what's your budget? Because like that it all just kind of falls on that. And sometimes if the budget's not there, we offer like solutions or we're like, okay, well, you know, like this is typically what something like that would cost. But in your case, like we can provide this for you. And, you know, we're always willing to work and negotiate to make the work happen, I guess. So
Yeah.
that's like a base level, I think, of what our process is. It varies, man. You know what I mean? But for the most part, it just kind of starts with just having a conversation.
Yeah, I would say to piggyback off that, you have to be prepared for, you know, different kinds of situations. You know, one being the client comes to you and they have a really defined vision. They know what they want. And then, you know,
Some
if
clients
that
you
makes
pull it out of them.
yeah. And so with the client that does know what they want, it makes the initiation of the project maybe that much easier or a little more streamlined, right? And then it's kind of like, hey, what can we bring to this relationship that adds value? And we're just going to do the best job we can. And then there's like the situation where they might not know what they want, right? And then that's exactly it. You have to help them figure out what they need, what they want, you know, look at their stuff and figure out where their standard for quality is at. And then, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, here's what your thinking, here's what you're looking at, and figure out where their budget's at, and then it's like, okay, is this a trustworthy? Is this a good situation to put ourselves in? You know what I mean? Is this a trustworthy client? Is this So not to talk about the ugly bits, but you have to figure out if it's going to be a good risk or not,
And that's another thing about the freelancing or like owning your own business versus like working for like a company that like, at the end of the day, you're going to get that check every Friday or biweekly or whatever it is, right?
There's a security there where you don't have to worry about it.
Have that. So you do need to make conscious decisions where it's like, okay, we're going to work with this person or this company. Like, you got to just have some layer of like trust, some level there. Which, we've been burned. Who hasn't, right? But like, you have to make those decisions like in the moment.
Speaking of that, because this leads to a couple different questions I have, but one, you're saying you just mentioned that you've been burned, right? How do you go about, and tell me if this has changed from before to now? How do you determine? I think this is something that all creatives struggle with. How do you determine pricing your services? Like, how do you come up with that price? And how do you figure out payment terms so that to hopefully make sure, like, give you some insurance on, like, if you get burned, you maybe get something like do you, does that vary from client to client? So how do you come up with your pricing? How do you come up with payment terms? And then I think you might have already answered it, but like, how do you, if somebody just balks at your price and is like, no, I'm not paying that. Like, how do you deal with that?
Right. Well, sometimes, when that happens, just like, oh, well, sorry, can't make it work. Depending again on those variables. I think for us, like the burn aspect was clients that don't pay on time or take forever to pay, which I understand there are nets. We've had a client that would be like a net 90. So like once the invoice comes out, like we're not seeing that money again for another like 3 months.
And then you have to balance that kind of that money and figure out
late payments. We're also a legitimate business now. We pay like quarterly estimated income tax. So like that, that kind of screws us sometimes because there are months where we have to pay like money to the IRS, right?
You have to pay money on taxes, but the money hasn't even really come in yet.
Sometimes.
Okay.
I mean, it's not as much of a problem now, but like when you're just starting out, like that can be like really stressful. You know what I mean?
Those payback periods can be stressful.
As for rates, like I'm not going to talk numbers with you, but like we do have like a rate structure, like a pricing structure, like for certain things. Like we have a day rate, a half day rate for when we come just to shoot, or you know what I mean? We have like an editing rate and things like that, right? And then of course there's the line items of just like things that we don't do, where maybe we have to hire a voiceover artist or someone else. Like
less about numbers, more I guess about the methodology of how you get to that number.
Well, I'll tell you this, the saving part of what we do for our business now, it's a 50% deposit. I think a deposit is where things really start to shift for us, and like a level of confidence where whatever the total budget is, say it's like 10 grand, 20 grand, the client has to pay 50% of that upfront before the project even begins, which gives us a sense of security now. But also it's like, well, now the client has skin in the game, and they're going to be much more accountable, receptive. They're not just
a little bit quicker to respond to things.
They're not just going to like, the project's not going to kick off and we're going to do all this work and, you're going to take 2 months or, that's like crazy. And it's never really been that long, but like sometimes like people don't get back to you right away, or you finish a cut and you're hoping that like based on the timeline, they should give feedback within a day or 3 days. Right.
Yep.
Sometimes they just ghost you, or, and we do have clients that we call like sandbags, which is just like, projects that just take so long to complete. So at the very least,
they weigh you down.
Oh yeah, they weigh you down. So at least if you have that 50% deposit, like, there is some money there that you're not waiting on,
motivation and capital to keep the project going from both sides too, because everyone's invested.
And we used to get burnt out. Like we do these huge jobs where it's like, oh my God, like,
wouldn't see the money for months.
When are we going to get paid? Like, I don't even want to do this work. You know what I mean? Like
that is a really tough part.
And it's tough because people, some clients, like they just demand. And like, they go out of scope, they creep, they ask more than what was like agreed upon, so.
Yeah. And it's definitely a time where like, you want to ask, you want to ask about like payment terms, and you want to make sure that's defined ahead of time, because, people don't realize when you're just starting out, especially how badly you're going to need that capital to keep moving forward. So,
because cash is oxygen.
Yeah. In that initiation stage, it's really important. And, people want to be cognizant of coming off like too needy or too pushy. Right. But it's also like, hey, that's just part of it. You got to find a way to, whether it's in your contract or it's just in your style, to communicate, hey, I would love to be paid for this sooner than later. It's not a bad question to ask. You just got to do it respectfully. So,
and it could be awkward.
It is awkward, but you just have to we have to do it all the time.
But that's our main protocol now. The 50% deposit has been a huge game changer for us.
Yep.
And it quells a lot of anxiety.
Yeah.
For the most part, unless it's like an insane job where it just takes forever to complete. So then you're not seeing that remaining 50% for months after.
I think we're in an age where, because we have access, like as we were talking about access to information, I think a lot of companies or even a lot of people think they can do everything themselves. The reason why I preface that with this next question is, when people are coming to you for to hire you, are you finding any patterns or anything you're noticing where like they're coming to you because of a specific like aesthetic, or if it's just like a certain level of expertise? Like, what are they, if they're coming to house and like picking you over somebody else or overdoing it, in-house, that was not meant to be a pun, versus them trying to do it in-house? Like, why do you find like, is there some kind of pattern that they're coming to you for specific, either certain things, a level of professionalism, is an aesthetic? Like, what are they coming to you for?
I think so. I think we built a reputation, right?
Yeah, I would say it's the I think it goes hand in hand. It would be the reputation and the aesthetic. There's plenty of work there to look at, to see the standard of quality that we hold ourselves to. And I feel like there's plenty of people who could vouch for us and be like, yeah, I hired those guys and they delivered. I mean, and
we have a style. That's like, it's part of the brand. You know what I mean? Like, at least when we have more creative control, and I'm not talking like a corporate video. Sure, we'll try to put our spin on something, but like for the more creative stuff, I think people do reach out to us because we have like just something, just a different style, I guess, with how we approach some of those projects, whether it's the way we shoot or cut it up afterwards. I don't know.
There's probably something to grab onto for like, every different personality type. At least one video in our portfolio would probably speak to, someone's style, whether it's like the way we cut to music, whether it's like the sound design that we add, whether it's just our style of shooting, or, if we do some cool lighting, I think there's just different things that inspire different people. So we try to add elements that, are enjoyable.
And we're inspired. Like when someone comes to us with a certain like product or like a message they want to convey, Austin and I will take let's call it like the discovery phase. I feel like a lot of like agencies call it that, which is where you kind of like do your research, right?
Yeah.
And we'll go on YouTube or like remember like a commercial we might have saw, and we'll kind of like pool all this content together and almost make like these like inspo like mood boards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we'll share with the client. We'll be like, I think we could really go like this approach. Here's how I would do it, and we get them excited about it. I just think that we're really stoked on the work that we do, and we try to like, have that energy. Not always, but we try to have that energy with every project that we take on. So
it's a great point.
Yeah.
I think we have had clients where it's very easy for us to invest ourselves just in the style of the video that we're trying to produce, because like whether they're like a musician or like they're a woodworker or whatever, right? Those are all different like vibes, and like to immerse yourself in that while you're creating it and just to exemplify that in the work is like, that's like what we love to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And we're always trying to push the envelope, even if like the budget's not high. Like I just think the way me and Austin, which a lot of people say it's not always the brightest, but like we do try to look at everything we do as like, this video is going to be the business card to our next. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like,
it's got to be the best. It's got to be better than the last.
Even if it was like really shitty circumstances, like we're going to try to produce it at the highest level we can, just because like when we've done that, it has opened up, new opportunities for us. So
how do you keep your own, because I think I was going to table this for later, but I think it's so pertinent to bring it up right now. How do you keep your own aesthetic style of doing things, but you're servicing a client? It's not like as if you're a director making if you're a director making a movie, you make it notes, like even if you're a big studio, you may get notes from the studio, but like the studio is like, hey, we hired you to be the director of this movie because you have a certain style and like that complements the movie, right? But you're working for other people and helping execute their ideas. So how do you
That's where it's different too. It's not the same as like Hollywood film, you know what I mean? Or
right.
Like Quentin Tarantino. This is a good point, because that's the world that we're in. We are in the world where sometimes this work is not for us, it's for somebody else.
For somebody else. So how do you keep your own style and way of doing things, but at the same, like, how do you balance that, but like while servicing and executing someone's vision that's not your own?
I think we're cognizant,
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I just think we've done it enough, and when you've done it enough, you build experience on like being able to not only separate yourself from like the work, like maybe removing your ego from this, like, okay, like this video or this idea isn't my cup of tea, but I'm gonna try to make it good in the style that they want. But also, like, we do have our style. We do have a taste. We have a pooled vision that we're working towards. So I think ultimately it just kind of comes out that way. Like he said, the word cognizant. You just got to be cognizant of who you're working for and who their audience is, and
knowing what you can get away with.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And like it's fun. It's fun for us to bring in the influences from ourselves that we like, but we also know when we might try lighting it a certain way, and then we look at it, and we go, that's a little crazy for this client, or that we're forcing it, right?
We're cutting it too fast.
You use your discretion. You use your best judgment, and then eventually, I think over time you get better and better at doing that. It's like creative confidence,
and the client will tell you too. That's another thing, is just communicating, like just making sure you're not just doing shit without like getting the approval of whoever the client is. You know what I mean? You want to like make sure they're happy with it, or maybe even before you get into the edit, you're like, okay, we got this and this. This is what I'm thinking we do. You know what I mean? And
get
just
their reaction,
seeing what they say. Yeah.
Going along with that, okay, you would have thought I planned this, folks, but I only plan things to a certain degree. Huh. By that I mean no planning at all. Going along with that, how do you work with clients who maybe they saw either your own work or somebody else's work, and they think that's what they want, or like, this is what I want, and like or maybe they see some kind of grandiose thing, and like you have to kind of bring them back down to earth and be
all
like,
the time, man.
Hey, we know you want to do this thing, but like, that was an ad for the Super Bowl. They had $1 million studio behind it, or they had like ungodly amounts of money. You do not have that. Like how do you, I guess, work with people and bringing them back to reality of like what they want versus what's actually feasible?
Yeah, I mean, again, some people are harder to like understand than others. I just think it's all about kind of the conversations that you have, and we try to do that up front before we, I mean, we don't really just jump into projects where like there's these crazy ideas. We try to like get them down to reality before we dive in. Okay, just so you got to set expectations. If you don't do that, that's how there's disappointment. That's how you develop a bad reputation, because we're in this business to people please. Whether we want to or we don't. We're providing a service. We're trying to be relationship builders, and ultimately we want to show that we care. I mean, that's a huge component as well. Like we just want to show the client that we really care about the work we're doing for them, and that we want this. Because sometimes people have these ideas where we have to bring them back down to planet Earth in a sense where it's like, okay, like, yeah, that's a cool idea, but like, is that going to have, business impact for you? Or is that just like something you think is cool? Like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Because there's that too. Like you have to like explain.
Okay, this looks cool, but it may not get the message across.
Right. And we're also still living in that era where like, people just have unrealistic views of how video production works. They think things are simple to do, or they think it's cheap. They don't really have the understanding of what it takes to pull off a shot or something that they've seen. And I just think it starts with a conversation and being like, yeah, like even what you said, dude, like, yeah, that was a Super Bowl commercial where they, injected like so much money into this. And there's probably like 60 crew members that made this happen.
All working around the clock. And they have like another crew that works when that crew has
second unit DP.
Yeah, because there's unions and stuff. So it's like, okay, we have another crew of other people that are just like we're paying them, and they might they may just be on deck just in case.
Right. There's an international crew where the other part of this was shot like in Ireland. You know what I mean? Yeah. So dude, it just, some people just don't know. And just, you got
to be prepared for that.
And you got to be respectful, because you just got to understand that like, just because someone's super high up in a company does not mean they like really have a clue.
How do you balance, and I'm wondering if it's an issue or if it's just something you're naturally able to do. How do you balance like creative expression and the creative thing? We're about to get, it's not like there's like a bomb's about to go off. Like, how do you balance like
creative expression and being creative with like technical tools and technical abilities? How do you balance those two? Especially because you are running a business, which I'm guessing that balance comes even more into play.
Well, I will say it's interesting because I think that at some point in this industry, creative meets technical. Like they go hand in hand. Like you might have the idea, but then there's a very specific technical way you can go about doing that. Sure, there's like an explorative, experimental way, but you don't have that kind of time on a client shoot. Time is money. So you want to be able to do it the right way and do it like a cool way and not, waste time and resources. So, right? Like, I think you figure it out.
Yeah. I just think it's all about figuring it out.
Yeah.
Sometimes, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Balancing. I mean, I don't know.
It's all case by case basis too. Like some projects you just have there's just time to prepare, do the research, the discovery, like I was saying. And then there's jobs where you just get kind of thrown into the fire and you kind of like survive and make your way out,
Yeah.
So I also have a question on when it comes to working with a client. Have you noticed that clients, like, do they come up with the success metrics? Do you, in the sense of, hey, you finished this video for this client? Is it just they watched it and they liked it and like, okay, good? Or did they put it out and it got like X amount of like eyeballs on it or clicks or impressions? Like have you dealt with success metrics and data and things like that? Yes or no? And if so, how does that inform your process?
So more so on our own. And it's something we're trying to push more on clients because like I said, we want to see if the work we're even doing is achieving the results. You know what I mean? Like what was the reason for it?
And what are the results if you don't have a metric to go off of? Who determines that metric?
I'll say this, in our situation, no. A lot of the clients don't understand that type of like data. They don't know how to like analyze it. For our own projects, like we have full visibility on some of the things that we put out and like, what the metrics are. I think those are really crucial in measuring this, how well the video performs. I think it's super valuable. Like we do, and we have clients that have the tools to do it. And I would just like to see it for ourselves because I think that's a selling component where if we were to pitch to somebody else, it's like, well, look what we did with this video. It achieved X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? How many plays it got, like,
this led us make conversions or like they sold this amount of product, like, and this video was like maybe not a direct driver, but it was a driver of that.
Or maybe it's a website video.
Yeah.
And like now people are hanging out on the homepage longer. Like they're staying on your website longer.
Yeah.
Like,
the retention on the watch time on the website or the website visit time duration went up by an average of like 40 seconds or something, like, I don't know. Like, but like things like that.
We've definitely had experiences where we're not able to measure this every time, but we've had experiences where we advertise a product and the person puts the promo out and they sell out. And that's like a great feeling. So I think, there's times where it's directly measurable. And then other times, it's really up to what the client does with the work. And we try to put our best foot forward as far as advising them like, hey, here's what you can do with this. Like, this is really what this is created for. And that's our goal when you
have to inform the client on their own metrics.
Oh, dude, you have no idea.
Sometimes that's interesting.
Sometimes we just have to tell them.
Fascinating.
Again, sometimes the client doesn't know. Like we have to sometimes tell them, like, okay, so this, this video is for this. This is how you're going to release it. This is how I would recommend you put it out. Sometimes we have to really coach people on like the distribution aspect of the content.
And I find that so fascinating and crazy because like anything else in a business, it's just like, I am paying for this. There better be an ROI. And then on this, it's like, I'm paying for this.
Make it cool.
It's like, well, don't you worry about the ROI? Nah. It's like, really, on everything else, you're worried about the ROI, but not like, I just find that really funny.
Yeah. I mean, it depends what situation the company is in too, right? There are companies that just want to put out cool content once in a while, and we've been hired for that stuff. And there's companies that are like, hey, we're trying to do a specific thing with this video, and that's cool too. So we try to cater to either, situation, I think.
I'm going to get into some more questions about just general thoughts on the industry to like wrap to kind of get to the finish line of this, just because I think
what's our time right now, man?
We're just at the 2-hour mark now.
Wow.
But we're in the final questions.
I hope the Gen Zers have patience to sit and listen.
I was gonna say, like, I've noticed my normal podcast time is about like 2 hours an episode. Which is like, hey man, it's long form content. Like,
you can listen to the first half on your way to work and the other half on the way home. Or if you don't have a commute, just listen anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But would it, one thing is, I think with technology moving the way it's moving and you having to, buy equipment and finance equipment, I want to get your opinion on the idea of you need to have certain gear to be considered a professional, or this software is the industry standard. That, do you think that that's still as prevalent? Do you think that's going away? Do you think it's a good thing it's going away? Do you think gear should even matter? Should just the end product matter? And even if the end product looks a certain way, well, if it got attention, like if it looks not so great, but it got attention more so than the polished thing, like who cares? Like,
that's a really good question, because I feel like my opinion on that changes regularly, because I'm a huge gearhead, just to be fully transparent. I feel like I've really pushed that on us, where I'm like, Austin, we got to get this camera. We got to get this. We got to get that.
And sub question, how do you determine, hey, we need this piece of gear?
Well,
besides something breaking.
Right.
Oh, right.
No, that's a good point.
Well,
Yeah.
I think in an effort to keep up with the times and make sure that our work is looking modern and looking up to par with what the industry standard seems to be, that all comes from like the way we see projects that we're inspired by, and we want to match that level of quality, or we want to have that production value in ours, whether it's the same cameras or not. I think yes and no. I think
it depends.
You want to
case
hold
by case.
yeah. I mean, and depending on what level of your career you're at and who you're working for, more often the kinds of clients being, I think it just depends. That's where
Here's my stance.
If your stuff's going on TV, you're gonna want
the big camera.
You're gonna want a cinema camera. You're gonna want something with really good color science. You're gonna want like really big files, and you're gonna want
that you can push.
And you're gonna want to light differently than when you're just making an Instagram reel for a company that's paying you $500 and you use your your DSLR
or your iPhone. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
this leads so perfectly.
It's perception, though. I want to get into this. It's perception. I think for us, we started out with like these tiny little cameras, and like we achieved big results. I think there's one part where it's like a lot of people think they need this huge camera, this big setup to look professional, but realistically, a lot of these cameras are tiny and they pack a punch, and you can get away just fine. And if no one saw you shooting it, they wouldn't know the difference.
We were talking earlier about
it's understanding the gear too. You should take that time to just master the tools that you have, and I think that's what me and Austin did before we had the capital and the business to move on to the higher end equipment. Not to say that we have a couple of rigs now that we look like I want to say we look legit when we roll up with this gear. Some people can see that, like some clients will see the big camera and go, whoa, I'm getting what I paid for. And then other people don't know the difference, dude. So like, it is subjective, but you just need to master what you have, and don't worry about having the nicer camera yet, unless that's super important to you.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about I think it was Soderbergh did High Flying Bird, the Netflix movie, which looks amazing, and it was all shot on iPhones. Yeah. And he was just like, I love iPhones, and people would be like, why an iPhone? He's like, because I can actually do stuff with that the bigger cameras, I can do angles and shots that I couldn't do with like the quote unquote professional camera that he was working with before. Right. So it's interesting, like the idea of gear.
The gear is a gift and a curse, man. It can slow you down. Like I've noticed that me and Austin have like added to our kit, and how it has just even setting this shit up now, dude. It's not just like pulling out this camera out of our backpack, putting a lens on it, and just press and record. Like there's so many things, and like these things are rigs, you know what I mean? That have like components and attachments and, wireless monitor feeds, and everything needs to work, and there has to be battery power, and it all has to just look good and work, and also has to work within the time frame and the constraints of the project.
Again, we're only two guys, so the gear has to function properly on tight time frames. We don't have like the 11 guys with the trailer, and they're doing everything for us.
We don't have the AC, we don't have the guy that's building the camera for us. We don't have the gaffer that's setting up all the lights. Typically that's us,
Do you think access has changed as well, in the sense of like, the cameras and, the quality of like the phones are getting better and better, where it's like starting to become less and less distinguishable from like the bigger cameras, maybe? Like to a degree. I'm not saying all the time, but like also
to a degree, yes.
Also access to editing software, like you can edit a video in your browser on your phone. You couldn't do that before. You'd actually need that. Now you can just like, you could do graphic design in a browser for free. So do you think access has changed it as well? Whereas like
the tools that were powerful and expensive, now those features are being offered for free in other tools, but maybe because some people feel icky using like the free tool because it's not professional, but it's like, well, if you get the same result, it doesn't matter.
I guess it's the purpose though, right? I mean, like you just look at TikTok and like Instagram Reels, like those, like the shit that's shot on the iPhone and edited on the iPhone, like sometimes performs way better than like, say, when me and Austin put together a reel with like our cameras. It's like, it's really weird.
That goes actually, not to interrupt, that goes right into a question I had where I was looking up the video on, it was a masterclass from the future, and they were talking to this one guest. He was talking about building, branding in the attention economy. And this guest, Alex Antolino, if anybody wants to go look it up. But what he said, and this guy's worked with like bigger companies and stuff like that, and he worked on this one campaign for this masterclass where it was like masterclass but for music producers, and it was one music producer that worked like platinum records, and he was putting out his masterclass, and so they asked Alex to come down and help like shoot and do the creative ... So he does it, and as he's shooting it, he shot one video that it was being put out on social media, but like other channels as well, but on social media, and said, and it was really nicely shot, nice graphics, nice music, and it got good metrics. But then he shot another one, and he just wanted to see what would happen. He shot another one where it was just on his phone, using the phone. He just pointed at the guy, and he had the guy introduce himself and just talk into his phone, and he put that one out there. The one that had like no production work, just shot on a camera, even though it was for this big company, he's like, let's just A/B. And even the company was like, we're not going to do this. He's like, I want to see how it does. That one outperformed it, like blew the more professional one, quote unquote, out of the water. And he was saying how he's noticing this shift where like, especially Gen Zers, he was noticing how they actually, there's a distrust. Like if they see a video for a brand and it's like slickly produced, they won't trust it.
I think it's a realness aspect. That's what me and Austin always talk about.
Are you guys running into that? And like, has it made you have to like pivot and shift and rethink the way you do things?
It's not really our world, so it doesn't like affect us to the point where, well, it could. I mean, we've talked about it. We want to make more social content or short form video. I wouldn't say it's our main seller.
Definitely. I think there's a level of unpretentiousness or organicness, realness, as Henry would say, that kind of like, iPhone-y content. I think it's just I don't know if this is specifically because of the algorithms or it really is because of what people connect with. TV
commercials now. Now I'm seeing like photos and like stuff to advertise Airbnb, and it's just like the vacation photos from somebody from Airbnb, and they put music in that
and that's because it's I think it's because it's not it just, again, the realness, it's genuine. It's like, oh, this doesn't feel like it's embellished and fake. The same way you see this really well shot interview of someone talking about how this pharmaceutical changed their life, and you know damn well that's just a paid actor that's being scripted. Whereas that the iPhone stuff just feels real. Maybe
even if it's staged, it has the feeling of being real.
It just looks DIY, and I think that people can relate to that because it's like, oh shit, like I could have made this. Maybe that's why people like it. I don't know.
I think he also mentioned Mr. Beast, who's like one of the biggest YouTubers. Yep. Might be the biggest YouTuber in the world right now. But the guy makes ungodly sums of money. But he has more than enough money to hire like an entire team. Like he could probably hire like 5 HAUS is as far as like production companies. He's got more than enough money, and yet. He makes everything, he even said it's intentional. I make everything look lower fi intentionally because it connects with the audience better. So I wonder, do you think if it doesn't affect you, do you think that's going to affect you guys down the road? Like, do you think that's going to become more and more of a thing?
We'll have to see. I think we
adapt. And then we're not worried about that. You know what I mean? Okay. I think with being millennials, we can adapt.
I think if that's the case, then we'll see that, recognize it, and move in a direction that's still going to work for us, for our own style, and still going to make an impact. Ultimately, I think that we look to make an impact with our content. The content that we produce, I think we still aim to make it feel real and organic, even though it might be kind of like hyped up or emphasized, right? Mm-hmm. I think there's still an element of realness. We were discussing this the other day to our work. I don't know if that's just because we don't have like, a million lights on set all the time, or we don't have
20 crew members.
Exactly. I don't know if it's that, or it's just that our style seems to gel well, but we skirt the line between this kind of like realness and surrealness with our work. And I think that's
where content's headed, dude.
Yeah.
These smaller teams that are achieving bigger results, I think is something like I'm not scared to answer your question. I'm not scared because I think that
That's not just scared, but maybe
we're already
you have to
yeah.
rethink like
But
things.
we're
that
already
you're
an
doing.
outlier. You know what I mean? We are
Gotcha.
already like disrupting the market by being this tiny little company that tries to exceed, quality.
Actually, speaking of disruption, do you think that all these social media platforms that weren't even started out as video first and now they're going into like a video first model and like content and everybody needs content.
Yeah.
Do you think that is changing what, or have you seen that changing what clients want and clients expect, or do you think that's going to come down the road because everybody's just like video's the new like we got to push video. Have you seen that kind of changing people's perception of like what they're looking for, or have you not seen that? Or
I think since I've been doing videos for people, I've just noticed it's a steady increase. It's just gotten more and more popular, and it's just become more and more like the cool thing to have.
I also think it happens when like they start hiring younger people as well. I do think that there is still a disconnect with that just because the higher ups are older in most scenarios, most companies, you know what I mean, based on just like the way corporate structures work. Look, sure, everyone wants video, but there are still people out there that like don't know how to get it,
Yeah, they don't.
I don't know how to explain that exactly, but what I'm saying is like they want video, but they don't know how to
make video that's uniquely theirs,
right, and also do it financially where it makes sense to them.
And there's a rate, some kind of rate of return or positive impact on the business.
Like to your the whole iPhone thing that you're bringing up, like I see that also as like a way for if you wanted to like create like packages. It's like, oh, you want like the high end cameras, or this looks like a job, at least for us. Like if we were to implement like iPhones into the workflow, I feel like that would be more for like, okay, we're gonna come in with like the iPhone on like a little gimbal and get you, like, because we have a friend that's in the real estate space, and like that's what. For people that don't have a lot of money and want like those quick little like past tutorial real estate videos, he just puts his iPhone on like a little stick and walks around and then cuts it together to some music, and that's it. And then he makes like 2 or 3, and that's genius because it's the output is high and he's not really
exerting. He's not like exhausting himself.
Right, trying to bring the crazy cameras that we have. Like he can get results that are decent, makes the client happy, and they don't have to charge an arm and a leg.
Yeah. I don't think we take on a lot. I think the thing is we don't look for a lot of work in that space. We are looking for work where we're climbing higher up the production value ladder, Yeah. It doesn't have to be crazy. I just think that's what we like. That's what we look at. That's what inspires us. That's what makes us say, wow, that's a cool video.
Yep.
So
with the amount of content that's out there, because I think to me, it's too much. Oh, so it's like, it's like so
way
much.
too much, way too much.
It's overwhelming.
And then there's other people that says there's not enough, which I don't understand that, but be that as it may. You got people like Gary Vaynerchuk, who I do listen to, and I agree with a lot of what he says. But do you agree on this idea of like he's just like, you gotta put the content out, you gotta put it out there, just put it out there, content, and like it doesn't have to be the best quality, you just gotta put it out there. If that's the case, then how does one stand out? If everybody's just putting out, like how are you gonna stand out? And then it's like, well, then you're just chasing what everybody else is doing. So then how do you do anything unique? It seems to be this kind of like conundrum almost.
Right. Well, I think for him, like it works. You know what I mean? He's such like a prominent figure. Like he just puts these like, low
and I'm
quality.
just using him as
No, he's a great example though. He's someone that I, at least early on, I like really disagreed with him. You know what I mean? Because like we met their CFO at an Oracle convention that we were shooting in like Colorado.
We met their
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and we met like not D-Rock, but they put us on to Gary and Vaynerchuk Media or Vayner Media, and like we became aware of them. This was like 5 years ago.
Yeah,
and we followed them for a while, and I just think over time we were like, nah, like this might apply to someone or a company, but this doesn't apply to the way we think. Because like we're for example, like we're not really like super active on social media. Like we're highly, we're not putting out content every day or like making stories and all this like extravagant stuff.
I was gonna say I noticed that, and you seem to be doing fine. Where it's like there's other people like, no, you have to do that, and that's the only because I fell into that trap. I was putting out content every day. I'm like, I don't even like doing this.
It's exhausting, and you're gonna burn out.
Yeah, I was just like, and it almost like didn't seem like it was helping much, I guess, but it was just kind of like I fell into that, and now it's like I've had people tell me like, dude, just take a step back. Like you don't have to do it every day. I'm like, no, but this person said, and they do, and it's like,
I
So
think it's
that
about
shit's a full-time
what,
job.
what works for you. Like there are people that have figured out how to like make it every day where it doesn't exhaust them. Like that's cool. If that works for you and your niche, that's cool. But for
Not
us as
for
a video
us, yeah.
production company, we
We don't have time for that, dude.
And I was like, actually,
we
how do
kinda
you
take our-
find yourself utilizing these platforms, or like, or maybe do you want to use them differently in the future? Like,
probably something we are going to improve upon in the future. But I think like, I mean, you know, we just try to put stuff out there that again, people are going to like and people are going to recognize, and it's going to put us in front of people who say like, oh, I could have this for my business, or, oh, wow, like, you know, my buddy who works at a marketing company or whatever was saying like, hey, we need some people to do this or that. Like we try to put this stuff out, not only so people can enjoy it. We obviously, if we put it out, we like it, we enjoy it. We want to show people. So it's just to inspire, you know, really. And that always leads to other stuff. So
such a good segue, just because I would tell me if this is a fair assumption. I would say you guys are a creative agency. Okay. So you're a creative agency. And you're just talking about marketers. And then there's marketing agencies. But I don't think you would consider yourselves a marketing agency.
No.
Okay. Because it seems like sometimes
Marketing
those-
is more
those-
data
yeah,
oriented.
but they almost get intertwined because like creative can work with marketing and marketing can work with creative.
They go hand in hand, yeah.
They go hand in hand, and in some places do both, but you don't do both. So where do you think that intersection happens between the creative and marketing? And like, you know, should somebody try and do both? Should they be separated? Is it just how you blend them? Because I think sometimes people, I've seen people perceive a marketing agency to be a creative agency and a creative agency to be a marketing agency. And I don't know if you've ever run into that.
Not us. I mean, because people just hire us for the creative aspect. It's usually marketing agencies that hire us, or we're third parties. So we're
Okay,
hired
gotcha.
by a marketing agency that has a client. You know what I mean? But I don't know. That's a really good question. I think, well, I kind of want to stay far away from that at the moment until, like, say, if I found some person that's like a great marketing manager or has like that expertise, I would revisit it. But for now, like, that's not mine. So I think we're just kind of in our own lane there.
And speaking of marketing, something I've noticed too is that sometimes there are people, and again, I get creativity is subjective, right? But they're super good at marketing themselves, and then the output of the work is maybe like so. And I'm just talking in generalities, not even any specific industry. But because they're able to market so well, like, and use social media, whatever, they're able to get higher paying clients, even though the quality of work may not be as good objectively as this other person. But because they're not on the marketing all the time, they're not landing this stuff. Do you think that in the future, you're going to maybe like either, or any creative agency really, are they going to have to get their own marketing department or hire somebody for marketing because like that's something to consider, or is that not even something that one should be worried about?
I don't
That's a
know.
good question. I think we're of the belief, or we're like our style, at least we try to just have our work speak for itself. And I realize that, you know, there's times where you can improve upon that approach, but that's just how we approach it. I don't know. We don't.
It's just the needs too. Like I've seen like some clients, you know, for like just to even just get hits. It's just like a UGC video, you know what I mean? Where it's like some guy taking a selfie video and he's like, "Oh man, I loved this product so much," and they run ad spend on that, and they kill it because again, it's that realness aspect. It's clearly a real person. It's not over the top and over embellished. It's just marketing in its most simplest form, and at least in the social space right now, that's doing a lot of big things for companies. Like, and they don't have to spend a lot. It's more on the media buy, right? It just, I think again, I've been using this word like this whole time. It's just a case by case thing. I just think it depends on the company, the messaging, what their needs are as an organization.
Going into the final three questions here. Sometimes I've noticed, especially when it comes to the more creative fields, a creative piece can be put out and the author, I think South Park actually did a whole episode like making fun of this, of when this happens, which I thought was brilliant.
Was
like,
HBO? Is it that HBO thing?
No, it was the one where like the boys ran like they wrote this really offensive book, like, and then they blamed it on Butters,
and the book was called the Poop That Took a Pee, and it was just them saying disgusting stuff to be funny. But then everybody interpreted it as this like allegory for like, no, what they're really talking about is class warfare. And then like they had to come out and be like, we're not talking about any of this. Like none of it.
Poop and pee.
Like we just decided it was funny, and then like it got so big, like the interpretation got so big that like even them saying no, we did this, and like all this crazy crap you guys are putting meaning into, like that has nothing to do with weight, and like nobody believed them. There's like they're lying and like da. So has there ever been points where like a point or you did something and either you were really proud of like the work, but then it was misinterpreted a certain way, or has that ever been a concern where it's just like, hey, I want to put it out like this, but then everybody else interpreted it as like something else? I just don't know if that's ever been a concern.
so.
I would say that we've been pretty, I don't want to say lucky, because like this is due in part to the work that we put in, but I would say that most of our stuff has been received pretty well. Like I don't think we've ever put anything out that was controversial in a bad way,
or maybe not even received like controversially, but just hey, this was the intention, but like
and it serves a completely different.
It serves a completely like even if it's still positive, right? Like even if it's like, hey, it got a lot of views, but maybe it got a lot of views for a reason that you weren't even going for. Like, has that ever like crossed your mind?
It's a good question. That's a great question. I don't know. I mean, I think there's times where we've done stuff where we're like going for more of a serious approach, and then in the edit there's like a bit of humor involved in it, and it's kind of, you kind of like make that work for itself. Like, especially that comes into play with music videos and like just creative stuff like that. Like you might have a really serious vision, or you might want it to be cool, but maybe it's kind of funny too. Like, content should be fun to watch. It doesn't always have to be like serious, It doesn't have to instill butterflies. Somebody could go, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, look at this guy in this set. Look at this lighting. Look at this. He
it's
blows
also art,
you know what I
so
mean?
It's subjective.
Exactly.
Interpret it how you want. Like at the end of the day, I don't care. Did you enjoy it? That's all I care about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think we have yet to have a big fake out situation where you put something out and it like kind of whoa, people took it this way. Oh, that's cool.
I think if anything, it's more so we share a video with someone and then they respond differently or they ask a question. We're like, oh, like I didn't really realize that was gonna like pique that type of curiosity. You know what I mean? Like people be like, oh, was this intended to be like this? Like even we showed you a video earlier and you're like, is this supposed to be like a trailer to a movie or something, or like I don't know, like maybe
that's what I got from it.
Right.
That's why that was really why I wanted to ask that question. Is like if you put it out one way, thinking it was going to go this way, and then like the public perceived it, whether good, bad, or indifferent, like depending on, like was the perception so different? You're like, well,
we haven't released that video yet, by the way.
I just meant in. But
it was supposed to be serious. I mean, it was. Yeah, I guess like a movie trailer, sure, it was supposed to be like this grandiose reveal. So in a way, it is a trailer. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's inspired by that like dramatic, cinematic, like trailer vibe for sure, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. And we've gone with that approach a couple times. It seems to work well when we execute it well, so.
Down to pretty much the last two questions. One, is there anything that goes on in the day-to-day operations of this of HAUS that's behind the scenes that you wish clients or the general public or other people trying to get in your space knew that maybe they don't realize?
I think sometimes the amount of managerial work and communication and forethought and planning and intentionality behind each project, I think people might underestimate that. And some projects, things just happen naturally and it's great, right? But that is just not always going to be the case. So I think people, specifically from a creative or a conceptual point of view, the way you approach a project, lots of different avenues, right? But getting someone to agree on one or showing someone how might not be that easy. Educating the client might not be that easy. So that's huge. It takes some time to figure out your method of doing so.
Yeah, I just think some people don't realize how much work this shit takes. It's not just cameras and editing. It's a lot more than that, especially if you want it to be a sustainable business, or you want to yield like a certain result from whatever this video is that you're trying to produce.
Finally, the last question. What advice would you give to other creatives, other freelancers, other people maybe trying to get into your space, maybe other people that are already in the same space you're in? Like, what advice would you give?
Find some people, find some projects, that inspire you. be inspired. You use them as an example or as a goal, or if they're local to you, go and talk to them, put yourself in the same room and get some real world experience and put yourself in a position where you have to learn and deliver. That's what I would say.
And don't be afraid to, be accessible. That's what we've been doing. And I think
be open-minded.
Yeah.
That's huge. Be very open-minded.
And I know it's easier said than done, but like, be inspired, but don't. I feel like people get really roped into comparison culture. Like, don't compare yourself. Everyone's different. You know what I mean? And like, don't like beat yourself up because like someone that you follow is like doing bigger or working on better projects than you. Like, use that as like inspo or something to drive you to, chase a dream, because this shit is not easy, dude. So
with that, I think it's a good way to wrap this up. So as is tradition, and by that I mean I stole this tradition from another show called Hot Ones.
Oh, sweet.
But you don't have to eat any wings for this unless you want to.
I wish.
I don't have any, but
got some hot sauce back there too.
We're in the final part of the show. It's an open mic. Say whatever you want. It's not even question based or anything like that. Just what final words do you both want to, leave out on?
Wow, that's hard.
Floor's yours.
I feel like I said everything I could.
Yeah, you yeah, it's true. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's you're putting me on the spot now. I like the questions more.
We're HAUS PVD. We're born in Rhode Island, based everywhere. Follow us on social media at HAUS PVD, and that is the spelling is at HAUS PVD for Providence.
Well, with that, I think this is a good one to ride out on it.
Yeah, thank you. That's
we
what
appreciate
I
the opportunity, man.
Thank you.
These questions were super on point. I feel like they really get to the heart of like a lot of the stuff that we have been wanting to talk about for a while, and we have our own goals for our own podcast. So this was a great kickoff for that. Yeah.
Maybe we'll bring you back on and we'll ask you the questions.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna
really
be in the
fun.
hot seat. That'll be a trip because I'm not used to that at all. So, Austin, Henry, thank you both so much for coming on, talking about these experiences, especially now with video being like this hot button topic. I think it's more relevant than ever to have somebody on behind the scenes. So super grateful to have you on. So with that, Henry and Austin, thank you. And HAUS PVD, where creativity lives. And speaking of creativity, like I always say at the end of every episode, this has been the Creative Capital Show. Keep on creating, everybody. Thanks.
And that's it for this episode of the Creative Capital Show. Thanks for listening, and a special thanks goes to our guests, Austin Delin and Henry Kerstgens of HAUS PVD. The Creative Capital Show is hosted, recorded, edited, mixed, and produced by me, Jason Sylvia. You can listen to the Creative Capital Show over at our website, creativecapitalshow.com. We're also available on Anchor FM, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and all other major podcast hosting platforms. If you like the show, please subscribe. Helps the show out a lot. And be sure to follow the show on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, and YouTube. I hope you enjoyed the show, and until next time, keep on creating.